You're listening to Freight Famous, presented by Rose Rocket, bringing you the people that make trucking move. From behind the scenes into the limelight. Here's your host, Justin Bailey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Freight Famous, a podcast produced by Rose Rocket. My name is Winnie, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Rose Rocket. And today, I'll be your guest host for the special 2023 recap episode. This is our once-a-year special that recaps all of our episodes. If you missed any, the drive up to your families during the holidays may just be the right time to catch up. Our normal scheduling is twice a month, and Justin will be right back with you in January. 2023 was the second year producing Freight Famous, and we dived even deeper into topics like resilience in transportation, embracing technology, growing as transportation business, and adapting to what was evidently a tough year for the freight economy. Let's jump in. Our first episode in this season features PhD Jason Miller, who is the Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management at Michigan State University. Evidently, he has many accolades under his belt, and in this episode, Jason shared his 2023 predictions and insights for the freight market. Like, what's happening in the freight market? What's going to happen in 2023? Freight cycles, reshoring, and much more. What stuck out the most in this conversation with Justin was when the two discussed whether or not freight is considered a commodity.
Is freight a commodity?
So that is a great question. I think it depends on the type of freight. I mean, some freight is absolutely a commodity. Other freight is absolutely not a commodity. And so I think the challenge for every carrier, especially small carriers out there, is if you have a couple anchor shippers who provide most of your volumes, is how can you provide operations to the point that your shipper doesn't view it as a commodity? They want to come to you because you provide unique value or unique service to them. But there's no doubt some freight is a commodity. Some absolutely isn't. It's hyper specialized. Ask any chemical hauler out there. Dow Chemical doesn't have very many opportunities for who's going to go haul industrial acids for them. And so, yeah, I mean, if it goes in a dry van trailer, chances are it's much more commoditized than some type of, heavy haul giant wind turbine. That certainly isn't a commodity.
Do you think a commodity market for freight will ever work?
No, because the challenge is if you think agricultural commodities, there aren't that many origins, there aren't that many destinations. It is effectively a perfectly homogeneous product. With freight, you have tremendous variation in terms of where it's going to, when it's being generated, where it's going. I mean, millions of different lanes. There's no parallel between, let's say, dry bulk ocean shipping or even trans-Pacific containerized freight from China to the West Coast. There is no parallel to that. So no, there will never be a full commodity market for trucking the same way there is for every other true commodity.
Our second guest, Hayden Cardiff, is the co-founder and Chief Innovations Officer at Idyllic. Justin and Hayden talked about the importance of assessing risks within your fleet and how exactly nuclear verdicts work in the American legal system.
When he speaks, you listen for good reason. This is a man of incredible wisdom and experience. And he said his two biggest fears every day, and he said this funny thing, he said, every day we start with 0 shipments, right? And he said every day before our first shipment, the things that I think about, the things that I worry about are every day is a cyber attack and a nuclear verdict. And I actually, as a Canadian, didn't actually really understand what a nuclear verdict was. Yeah. So I understand. So in Canada, because most of our this is mostly an American show, and so I talk about some of the naive aspects of me being a Canadian on the show often are. This is another one. Is I've spent enough time in the U.S. and watched enough U.S. TV to understand the very sort of predatory nature of the legal system.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
When it comes to there's lots of names like ambulance chasers and these types of things. What I didn't appreciate was how disproportionate some of these settlements can be to trucking companies. Therefore, how profitable it can be to target companies. And I can only imagine the business whether it be the lobbyists, whether it be I can only, and I really, again, I am 2 questions deep on this topic, but to hear you sort of one of the sort of godfathers of this industry say that he has 2 concerns, and that is one of them. That really struck me, and it got me thinking a lot about that. And so as you're saying these things, it's like that. This is a thing.
It's real. It's very, very real. I mean, they've got legal practice, legal definitions and names based off of it. Reptile theory is one of them, right? I mean, you talk about conferences. Plaintiffs' attorneys have massive conferences every year on how to best sue trucking companies. What are what you should go after in discovery, what's available, what data is there, how to get the jury on your side. I'm talking like to the effect of the facts of the case clearly state the trucking company did nothing wrong. How do you still get multiple millions of dollars out of them? And this is one of the things. It is one of the things that the U.S. legal system needs to change quickly. Tort reform and how punitive damages and how all that is effective, especially in the trucking industry. But I mean, when you've got cases where large OTR company driver, inclement weather comes on, parks on the side of the road, clearly parked in a legal parking space off to the side of the road. Passenger vehicle coming on the other side of the highway hits ice, crosses the median, strikes the legally parked truck. Unfortunately, there were fatalities. There was people who weren't wearing seatbelts. It was a whole thing. Family in the car. They sue the trucking company and win $150 million.
Wow.
I don't know how, and it's, they argued that the trucking company didn't have a written and documented policy on what to do in inclement weather. Even though the driver did exactly what they should have done, they just didn't have a documented policy. Therefore, other drivers of this fleet aren't going to follow it. Therefore, they need to punish them to prove a point. That's, he's not wrong when he's saying that nuclear verdicts are the things that keep him awake. He's not the only one. That's one of the things that kind of going into this. I know the trucking industry as a whole is tired of hearing about it. For the past 5 years, that's all we've been talking about is nuclear verdicts, tort reform. But it's still one of the biggest causes of heartache and pain, both in dollars spent as well as insurance increases. It's a challenge, and being able to have your data buttoned up, your process buttoned up, and proactive and predictive, coaching. All are things that help to prevent those.
Our next guest was Dee Sova, founder of Trucking Divas Rock and CDL instructor at Prime Inc. Dee and I actually met at the American Trucking Association last year, and she is so admirable in her strength and resilience. She talks to Justin about her personal journey to becoming a positive role model for women in trucking and a spokesperson for change. As a driver herself, Dee shares her knowledge for best practices when it comes to keeping your drivers happy and treating them like your own customers to retain them over time.
Well, it's kind of one of those, you really got to know your drivers, number one. And the other thing is you got to pay people. You can't expect to not pay someone for work that they do that requires them to be away from their friends and their family for long periods of time. Marriages are at stake here. Your children are growing up. They're growing up without a mom or a father. These things have to be thought about. So you got to give drivers time off when they need the time off. It is a job that can quickly burn a person out if not dealt with correctly. The beautiful thing about over-the-road trucking, no matter what company you work for, is you pretty much can take your home time anywhere. Some people will choose to go home. Some people, maybe they want to be along the beach in California. I don't know. But you got to kind of know your drivers and be willing to work with where they are. And the other thing is, what about showing your drivers how they can be successful? We have a tendency to want to just hire people in these companies, but we're not giving them a proper career path. Maybe they come in as a company driver, but one day they want to own their own truck. Can they own their own truck through your company? Are you willing to show them the path to how that happens?
In this episode, Justin is joined by Ryan Ernst, a Canadian partner at Deloitte and leader of Canada's planning and fulfillment practice. Together, they go through supply chain trends from the last year, and what really sticks out in this episode is the discussion around visibility in the B2B space and how businesses can work towards offering more of it.
What do customers, what do you and I want now that might be different than before? Or what does the future of the customer look like?
I think so there's you and I as a consumer and our home delivery and all. We can talk about e-com and last mile. I'll put from a business customer perspective, they're related because there's when I order my Vindaloo on a home delivery app, I can see that when it's being prepared. I can see that the order's taken, when it's being prepared, when it's being picked up. And what's that?
Are you referring to Vindaloo Indian restaurant? That is the best Indian food, isn't it?
Yeah, and so although you know folks will say well, it's not really Indian food Vindaloo, but that's a different story. It's a different story. But it's what I order. So but in the chat I can see people that's not really Indian food. But I like it. Yeah. And but the fact is I can see it. And I can see when it arrives. I can see when it was dropped off at my doorstep, and I know how much it costs, and I know what was done, and I've got proof of delivery. I have all these things. That's a $12 order. Yeah. So there's an intolerance now as individuals when we go to our businesses to have anything but that when I'm dealing with an $8 million shipment of electronics. Right. Or why can't I have that here? Right. I want that. Yeah. Right. And so that trend to transparency and visibility in the B2B space is huge. Yeah. I also want transparency to your interactions with my customer, right? The appointment scheduling, the pickup, the delivery, the interaction, what took place, what feedback, different components around that. So how do you represent me? Right? Because that's how that's important. And so from a customer perspective for a service provider, those two components around taking our consumer experience and bringing it to a B2B space is big.
You made a really interesting point there. I like this idea that visibility goes beyond just the we think of visibility as I want to be able to track the whereabouts of the product. But your point there was how are you representing me is really interesting because that's not just where is the product, that's how are you behaving, how are things being, what are your engagements with my customer that really, for when I'm engaging a trucking company and largely, and I'll think about LTL because I use this example a lot, the traditional way you think about LTL is a truck shows up, you put it in the truck, the freight goes into a black hole, and then, one day to 1 week later, it pops up on the other side somewhere. And that's kind of the traditional experience that you might get there. And so being able to pull out what's happening in that black hole. That's right. Not just simply like the movement of the freight, but like, okay, fine, the customer got the freight, but how did you engage with them? How did that look? How did you represent me? Yep. And I think that's an area when we use the word visibility, I almost think we have to be careful because it has such a wide range of meaning and that it actually means a whole bunch more things than just simply where's the beyond the dot on the map. Right. Yeah. So
you have track and trace from a status perspective, like last node and all that different things. But visibility is exactly that, right? Which it's more than just the GPS location of where product is. Yeah. It's everything from what was the temperature of that product all the way through and exposing that. Yeah. Right? What is the conditions of the vehicle? Yeah. Right? What are the interactions with the customer? Yeah. Right? What is the any feedback or different aspects that may come through that? And so that transparency is something from an organization perspective, which is a hard thing to get to. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, how much do you want to expose? About I'm a day off, but I'm still within my service parameters. So do I really want to share, that I'm a day off and why? Yeah. Or do you just say, you know what, just get over it and share it? Yeah. And have that sort of more open and visibility to what the heck's going on.
Earlier this year, our team got the chance to attend the Mid-America Trucking Show, and we saw some pretty impressive trucks at the show and shine. We also got to record an episode right at the show where Justin sits down with Brent Hutto, the Chief Relationship Officer at Truckstop. Brent reminds us that truckers are very literal people and highlights the importance of knowing your audience when you're trying to build relationships.
In awe of the way it actually works. And I feel like I'm learning so much still. Even like coming to the show, the things you were just saying. So I'll give you a good example. And you said it. So this is our first time doing trade shows.
Okay.
This is our second or third trade show ever. Yeah. And so we just built this booth this year and sort of did it with our own kind of ideas on what we would do. And you said just earlier, you may not even remember saying it, but you said, truckers are literal.
Oh, yeah,
and so,
super literal.
Right?
Super literal.
So in our booth, we've got this really cool design, and we've got a coffee shop here. We try to take some elements from our office. And so to be cheeky on the coffee, we've got a sign that says fuel stop.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Did you? Right. So, I didn't know, you and I didn't. So we've got people coming by being like, I've never seen your fuel stop anywhere before. They think we're a Flying J competitor, right? So it's just like, shit. It's like, so right away, I saw this sign and I heard this, we got to change this thing. So we're going to go back, we're going to take this down and put Rose Rocket TMS up on here now. Because it's just these, and so you'd think that after 15 years and talking to hundreds of customers, you'd think that this would be obvious to me by now, but it's just the learnings are just so, they just come at me continuously and often. And it's, I don't have much more to say on that, but it just really is, it blows my mind a little bit how far and how much I still have to learn.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. Prior to Truckstop, I worked for a media company. Like I said, I worked for Overdrive Magazine, which is, it started in 1961. It was the sort of Bible version for this industry on.
Is it still around?
Truckers having a voice. They actually stopped making the magazine. They're a digital version now. But I just learned over a long time of dealing with owner-operators that because what you want to do in any company is you want your customer or your potential customer to understand what you're trying to communicate to them. And truckers are so literal that if you say, I'm this, or I want to say this, they take you at your word. And we know this at Truckstop because we were the internet truck stop.
Right.
That's our official name. When we started in 1995, we started by a guy who's a mathematician, physicist, and he goes, well, truckers used to find their loads at a truck stop on a TV, and so we're going to be on the internet. So I'll just call our company the Internet Truck Stop. And so I can't tell you how many people have come up to us going, hey, where are your truck stops?
And
I'm going, this is why I know this, because it's like, we're not a truck stop. Well, okay, do you have access to all the truck stops? We're not that kind of truck stop. So we've had to explain ourselves a lot in the marketplace too. So knowing your audience is very literal. Is super important because you want them to understand you. And when I was in the media world, I would meet with a lot of advertising companies, and they would say, okay, what's the secret? What's the secret? And I'd say, well, just remember that your audience is very direct and very literal. Don't try to get too creative. This isn't the high end. You want to win an advertising award with your advertising and your imagery. Because your audience will look at it and go, first off, they'll look at it and go, well, that ain't me. Second off, they'll go, I don't know what they're talking about. So looks. Okay,
I feel you're talking about Rose Rocket right now.
And then they'll flip the page and see somebody that says, we'll save you money on your fuel. Okay, that's good. So it's just knowing your audience. It's like anything else in life, whoever it is, whatever relationship you're trying to create is know who you're talking to.
Our next guest, Eric Zalid, partner and associate chairman at Benesch Law, actually flew in from Cleveland, Ohio to discuss nuclear verdicts in trucking with Justin. Nuclear verdicts have been a major concern for large carriers in the past few years. Eric shares some shocking cases that certainly may give transportation companies a wake-up call to better prepare themselves against litigation. Here are the 5 magic tips he shares to help your company mitigate the risks around this.
I can feel the listeners here saying, get me out of this. How do we avoid this? So what are some of the things that companies should be doing to help better ready themselves, prepare themselves, mitigate the risk around this? So let's go back to these magic 5 tips we talked about. What are some of these points in which they need to be thinking about, immediately?
Yes, let's go over those. So these are things that the motor carrier, trucking company, and the broker too can do. This is primarily geared toward motor carriers, but I think the brokers can learn from it too. Before an accident. I mean, I think there should be constant vigilance these days. So I represent a lot of motor carriers, right? And 99% of them are not villains to be vilified, right? So it's important to have within the company a very good safety culture. And by that I mean things like give awards for number of safe miles driven, give awards for maintenance programs and effective maintenance and safe miles driven with well-maintained vehicles. Keep track of all that. Have programs like that and give the awards. A related topic, try to be involved in your own community for the company in some fashion, sponsor a Little League team, a charity, because remember, we're telling the story in the litigation, in that videotape deposition I said, and my thesis is throughout the litigation, we try to push out those positives throughout the litigation. You can't push them out if they're not there. So some companies don't give awards, but they have very safe drivers. It's worth it to have that certificate and plaque on the wall to be able to counter the vilification. So have those in place so that they can be used by your defense lawyer to really help negate. Remember, this isn't even the fault for the accident, to negate the vilification overall of the company.
So really, just in sort of summary, there, it's build a brand and build an emphasis around safety, and build a brand and emphasis around your image, really, right? This is what we're talking about. Just create a good, positive image for yourself. So in the event of you have goodwill currency to use when needed in case of a deposition. Is that a fair way to summarize that?
That's an excellent summary, and two follow-up points, and build that culture, build that brand, but make sure you're chronicling it, make sure you're documenting it, so there's exhibits that your lawyers can use. And of course, remember, building that culture does something else. Let's not forget, it helps prevent accidents in the first place. So, it's a dual benefit, of course. That really minimizes risk, not having an accident.
For sure.
Autonomous trucking is still top of mind for the industry in 2023. Our next guest is the Business Analytics Executive Officer at the University of Iowa, PhD Ann Campbell. Her and Justin have a great conversation about the barriers that currently exist with autonomous trucking, as well as adjustments that may need to be made in order to integrate autonomous trucks into the industry.
What is the actual state of autonomous outside of the PR and the negative tech press, and what is actually happening today in terms of in market applications that are creating some sort of value? Or is there? And if there's not, that's okay too. Just maybe I'm looking for that general, what's the truth?
Well, we're getting to the value piece. I think that's an interesting way that you present it. I think the challenge associated with getting a lot of these companies up and running or seeing more of a widespread adoption is what I call the origin destination piece. Because I think the autonomous technology seems to be pretty well developed for the on the freeway driving in good weather where there is not an accident in the road, right? So that part that is maybe not the most stimulating for drivers, the part where it gets boring and it's long and it's just on the freeway driving straight, I think the technology is there, right? But the challenge is the origin destination piece, which is getting the truck on the freeway and getting the truck also fueled within the process, right? It was still, most are going to be some form of gasoline, diesel kind of fuel, and then getting it to the final destination still requires a human component, a significant human component, right? So I think we're a very long way from origin destination being something we can widely do. So I think companies that began with that model are not working well, right? Because they still have to figure out those pieces. We still need a human in a lot of places to get it from the original warehouse, the original manufacturing site, a lot of ports. Some ports are implementing tools for this, but still a lot of times we need the human component to get it on, and we need a human component to go in the parts that aren't major freeways. Like we've talked about this idea of kind of having this infrastructure of transfers where the autonomous vehicles could stop and have a driver get on to help them navigate cities and things like that. So we're a long way, I think, from that, maybe not long, but a few years away from being able to have that to be at a widespread level.
We were so lucky to have executive coach Elizabeth Kerfis on Freight Famous this season. Companies are nothing without their people, and Elizabeth is the gold standard when it comes to knowing how to activate the best out of people. I've had the pleasure of knowing Elizabeth over the years, and every time we meet, I learn just a little bit more about being a leader. Elizabeth is a master at helping companies identify and solidify their company culture, and her episode teaches you how to do it even with limited resources.
First of all, it goes back to that initial question around vision. What is the company actually trying to do? Like, why should people rally around this common purpose? They want to come to work every day and rally around the purpose. What is the purpose? What is the vision? What are they trying to do? Everyone in the company needs to know what that is. People want to go to work and they want it to feel good. And I don't mean fancy, tech kitchens where you get free snacks and lots of loot. They want to work with people who are getting good opportunities, doing good work, and know why they're doing what they're doing. So I think the first, most basic thing you can do is get really clear on what is the purpose of what you guys are doing. Whatever the company is, what are you trying to build? What is that vision? Everyone should know what that is. And instead of it happening organically, I would challenge you to say it is the responsibility of everyone in the company, especially senior leadership, to continuously and constantly articulate the vision. People want to know what their work is and how it leads up to the purpose. And this isn't just I understand it's a privilege and fluff. This is actually going to drive efficiency. It's going to drive productivity. You can have the coolest product in the world and you could have really healthy books, but if you don't have the culture, people are going to leave. You're not going to retain talent. You're going to have employee turnover. And I'm sure, especially in a tough market, the toughest you've seen, these things are happening in the trucking industry. So this ownership by leadership to say, we need to commit some time, even though we're completely scarce right now with trying to get tasks done and trying to stay above water. It's taking a very deliberate decision and saying, we need to get together and get really clear on what we are trying to do and make sure everyone in the company knows how to do it. The second piece, part of the same thing, is what are the norms and beliefs for how we want to get there? What do we need to align on so that people know how, written or unwritten, we are expected to act in service of those things? If you don't do it, culture will eat strategy. I don't care how great of a strategy or product you have, if you don't have some intention behind how you expect people to work together, you're gonna have the turnover, you're gonna have the retention, and those are all leading indicators. They're all canaries in the mine to tell you what's happening, and you'll lose people. You want to get people rallied around the same common vision, same common purpose, and you want to have an expected way of being together in service of those things. Otherwise, it's going to create itself. This will create itself. It doesn't matter if you're a fancy tech company or you're a family-run company of 7. I have worked with all and in between. This will take over and run itself, and you'll have the same issues that I'm sure you're having now. So I truly believe anyone who's listening here, it is the responsibility of everyone in the company to own this piece. And I think one topic that goes underneath this is managers versus leaders, right? Managers are just focused on specific goals, specific tasks with one team. In times of wartime, which, your CEO loves to say, wartime versus peacetime. In wartime, everyone's just like, we need to tackle and we need to get things done. But the reality is that's where culture really starts to fizzle and we start to lose track. People start to leave. There's burnout. People don't want to be a part of it anymore. So it really is, you have to move from just do this, do that, executing, to empowering people to be able to do good work in service of the vision, following these written and unwritten rules, so people want to be a part of it.
Next up, Ryan Schreiber, Chief Growth Officer at Metaphora, talks to Justin about what it means to achieve operational excellence within a business. One of the keys to achieving this comes from creating a unified customer experience, which is all powered by investing in technology.
It's a failure of sales to not be able to actually accomplish that, to actually be able to execute against that. But that's a story for a different day. However, Jay, one of the things you're highlighting is that operational excellence can also come from making sure that you provide a unified customer experience, regardless of what metal, as you said, is on it, whether it's a pink truck with white lettering, a blue truck with yellow lettering, or, pick the colors of your trucking company, red and black, or whatever it might be. That consistent customer experience in terms of outcomes, in terms of updates, et cetera, routing, billing accuracy, all the things that actually churn a customer for you. On-time percentage, sure, like churns a customer for you, but customer experience is what really churns a customer. If you have wrong invoices all the time, they don't want to work. It doesn't matter how cheap your rates are. Like, they're going to stop working with you, right? If you can't get tracking updates in a timely manner, they're going to stop working with you. So providing that consistent customer experience. And again, that has to be powered by business process and training, but it also has to be powered by technology.
Hope Zavara started out teaching yoga classes. Then she decided to pivot and start a business teaching trucking fitness. As the CEO and founder of Mother Trucker Yoga, Hope's goal was to make movement accessible to create positive change for drivers' health and well-being. In addition to her sharing her toolkit, the most interesting part we wanted to showcase is her idea of the 1% rule.
I love that you said 0 to 1 and not 0 to 100.
Yeah.
And so first things first is to decide what the level of your commitment is. There's a reason why New Year's resolutions, I think it's like at 5% now, why less than 5% of people follow through after February. That's 28 days or, 30 some, 60 some days in, 2 months in. Because they're biting off more than they can chew. Their level of commitment is going from the couch to bodybuilder in like a few short weeks. And then they give up and they actually revert back even further from where they were. So this idea of 0 to 1, I call it the 1% better rule, is what are you willing to commit to at the very basic minimum? So instead of I'm going to buy a gym membership, go to the gym 5 days a week, never eat sugar, never drink caffeine, I'm going to go full keto, gluten-free, dairy-free, wheat-free. Pretty much I'm just going to live on air for the rest of my life. Instead of going that space,
right?
How about every Monday morning, you're going to make it a point to yourself to do that one stretch you saw Hope do on Facebook every single morning, just Monday morning. Or you're going to walk 1 day a week on your 30-minute break, just as many laps as you can around your truck. And that's it. Low commitment. But there's something that happens in the brain when we actually follow through what we say we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's like this boost of endorphins and serotonin and dopamine come about, and we feel good from it. And it makes us want to continue. And so the habit is formed now. And then we just slowly expand the habit from there, which is often the opposite approach where everyone else is telling you, you got to do this, you got to be on this meal plan, you have to do all these things. And that's scary for people. And there's actually a part of our brain when we're told to stop doing something, we actually inadvertently hold on even tighter. It's actually a part of our brain. It's not on purpose. It just happens. It's our need to self-preserve and protect. And so instead of taking away, I often just tell drivers to add. If you don't want to get rid of your soda and you don't want to get rid of your coffee, cool. Like I drink coffee too. It's okay. But how about instead 1 bottle of water in the morning? That's it. Just 1 bottle of water. I don't care what you do the rest of the day. Just 1 bottle of water. If you've never exercised a day in your life, how about just 5 minutes? Give me 5 minutes. If 5 minutes is too much, how about 1 stretch every time you fill up with fuel that actually looks like you're tying your shoe, so no one's even going to know. And just commit to that through hell or high water. That's the 0 to 1. And then when you're like, I'm doing it all the time, just like brushing your teeth, Justin. Like I can't get up and not brush my teeth. Like it's a habit. I have to do it. It's automatic. And then I'm going to floss, and then I'm going to use mouthwash, and then I'm going to do tongue scraping. But that didn't all happen right away. And so what's the one thing you're willing to commit to at a low minimum through hell or high water, make that become automatic?
If you listen to transportation podcasts regularly, then you might already be familiar with Ramel Watley, the CEO and founder of Truck and Hustle. His episode sparked a great conversation with Justin about their inside secrets to the entrepreneurial mindset. They also go into how Ramel's business has created a fantastic platform that supports diversity in trucking. In this highlight, he talks about how he's approached bringing that message to people, and the secret is all in listening to one another.
I think right now, trucking has always been very, very segmented, right? And very cliquey. There's tons of different organizations. There's tons of different ethnic groups that all stick together in their cliques, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can go to different areas of the world and you'll say, oh, this particular group runs this area. This particular group runs that area. It's just the way things are. And it's the same way throughout the whole, transportation and logistics ecosystem, right? So diversity is a difficult conversation because, historically, the industry has been so segmented and so scattered, right? So what we've tried to do is bring that together, right? Because there's not many platforms that are focusing on just, I think the way that you show the way that you're able to tie people together is through storytelling. Right? Because the only way that I can see myself in you is when I hear your story and I can find some type of commonality. If I don't know who you are as a person and I don't know your story, I have a bunch of assumptions about you that may or may not be true. But the only way for me to know that for a fact is by hearing you out. So you have to create these types of platforms to be able to hear people's perspective, right? In a safe space and have somebody that is willing to listen and willing to, not try to combat and not try to argue and push back. No, just listen. It's all about listening. And that's been the problem with trucking and just America and the world in general. We don't listen to each other. Everybody has their own point of view and they just run with that. And that gets passed down from generation to generation. And if nobody stops it, it'll just continue. And that's how we have these, for lack of a better word, cancers that just continue to grow. And then we never, ever work together. We always feel like, oh, I don't work with them because they're like this. Oh, this particular group is messing up the industry. They're taking all the cheap freight. Oh, they're doing this because they're that. Where do we get these things from? Do you have data to support that? Do you have analytics to support that? How do you come to these conclusions, right? People have all these conclusions about people that they have no data to back up. It's just because I heard or someone told me or whatever, just to gossip in the rumor mill. So I think diversity is the most important thing in transportation because we have to work together. We all have different opportunities. We all have different skill sets, and we all have different ways that we can drive the industry together, right? Different resources. So in order to really make this work for everybody, where everyone can win, because it's not a great industry when there's only 1% of the people at the top winning, and the 99% who are working harder than the 1% are losing. And could barely afford, ramen noodles at the end of the week. That's not fair. That's not a fair industry. So we have to figure out, and I don't know the answer, but all I could do is start having the conversations. That's it. That's my part, right? I'm going to try to create the platform. I'm going to try to do the events. I'm going to try to do the things that's going to bring people together to start having those conversations. And that's my contribution. You guys are smarter than me. You figure out how we're going to fix it. But I'm going to try to create the platform that allow people to start feeling comfortable speaking and being around and connecting with each other. That's what I think is the key. We have to start taking down those walls that we've built around ourselves, man, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help us personally and doesn't help the industry at all.
Evan Shelley is the CEO and founder of TruckParkingClub.com, and he's been on a mission to solve the truck parking crisis. We were shocked to learn that the average time it takes for a truck to find parking is 50 minutes. 50. In this Freight Famous episode, Evan talks to Justin about why he's become so passionate about helping to find a solution through his business. The easiest way to think about it is like an Airbnb for truck parking, and the impact it's been making has been huge.
Yeah, so the numbers that a lot of associations and people throw around is the average trucker takes 50 minutes to find parking on average. On a daily basis, which is crazy to think about. And another number is that for every 11 trucks, there's one parking space available, which is pretty insane. And to follow into your last question, there was just a huge wreck on an interchange where a Greyhound ran into 3 trucks. I don't know if you heard about that, but it actually got a ton of notoriety in mainstream media. And what was happening was the trucks had to pull over somewhere, couldn't find parking, so they were parked on the shoulder of an interchange, and then a Greyhound bus hit them, and I believe 3 people died. So that's ultimately an example of truckers doing the best they can to find parking, and then it being an unsuitable location, and then unfortunately some bus swerving off the road just enough to hit these trucks. So that's one example. And I think truckers are just doing the best they can, to be honest, with what they have.
When you're thinking about developing sites, and when I say developing sites, working with I guess landowners or development companies or whomever who might have space that could be repurposed for truck parking. Again, 2-pronged question. How do you know where the best spots are based on, like, freight is kind of everywhere, right? And so it's like really anticipating where you're going to get utilization. So you said, for instance, that first location you looked at, you said this is really good for truck parking. Why specifically there?
Yeah, so in that particular scenario, a couple of years ago when I was looking at that as a development opportunity, it seemed that the demand was very high for trucks to need to be in that area. That area was Central Florida, which is still a huge problem. But for Truck Parking Club in particular, there are obvious areas like Central Florida, South Florida, New York City, LA, those obvious areas we would love to continue adding more and more spaces there on top of what we already have. But you made a good point. Freight is everywhere. We have rural locations that to be honest, when the property owners added them to Truck Parking Club, I would have never thought they would have gotten bookings, but they get bookings because freight goes everywhere. And it's those rural areas where they don't know anyone or have any connections that we actually provide a lot of value there too. And you think, well, there's just space everywhere. Well, is there space where it's a vetted location where they feel okay about it? Not as much as you would think. So we do want more parking in the areas that need it the most, but we also welcome any locations, even very, very rural locations, because we do know there's a need there too.
If you're looking to start your own brokerage, this next episode might be a good one to listen to. Mike Riccio, founder of More Than Miles Consulting, speaks with Justin about the 5 golden rules any aspiring broker should know. One of the most important parts of the episode is the conversation around the necessity of financial stability before you start.
I certainly think cash and financial stability is what I would think is number one or forefront, right? I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are typically sales oriented, right? They've got a lot of initiative, they got a lot of drive. Maybe their strength is not financial education, or they got the business, but someone else handled it, how it got billed, how it got paid, and how they got taken care of. And I think a lot of times financial stability and cash goes, you don't think about it when you're getting going, right? You're all excited about bringing new business in. And well, if you're getting paid in an average of 30 days and you're paying your carriers quicker than that, right? If you're paying them in 7 days or, immediate pay or 14 days, you've got to have either a line of credit or cash to make that happen. And I think sometimes, especially when companies grow, they don't think through that growth. And I always go back to early in our career. I remember sitting down in front of the bank with my father-in-law, quite frankly, and I had some new business, right? I was all excited. I'd landed a couple new accounts. We're a relatively new broker. It's 2002, 2003. And we've got this business coming in, and we needed to increase our line of credit because we were going to be paying these carriers a lot quicker than we were going to be receiving the money. And I don't think really our bank quite understood what we did, right? I don't think they understood trucks and trucking companies because there was hard assets there, but I don't think they really quite understood at that point in time the supply chain as we all know it today and what our role was. And they wanted more collateral. Well, at that point in time, everybody in the company had already given them all the collateral, personally guaranteed everything we all had. And they said, well, I forget what the number was. Let's say we need another $100,000 from you. And we're like, well, if we had that $100,000, we wouldn't be sitting across the desk right now asking for this money. So I think sometimes you really got to think through, how am I going to cash flow this? And can I cash flow?
Cybersecurity and protecting your company's data is more crucial than it's ever been. IT and security leader Ian Penning sits down with Justin in this episode to talk about the mistakes many businesses make when it comes to security. Eventually, these mistakes contribute to how you become a target for cyber attacks. One of the most important takeaways is that businesses should find a trusted data partner to hold your data.
But you could go for a trusted partner. Look, I use Gmail. Yeah. Right? Why do I use Gmail? I've set up mail servers before, back in the, late 90s, early 2000s. I've set up email systems completely independent of Google or anything else, even before Google was a thing. But I don't run my own email server. Right. I just let Google do it because Google's secure. I can trust them. They're fine, right? So, if you're looking at, your entire business, and worst case scenario for this, back to the ransomware, right? Say your entire business is in Microsoft Excel sitting on a laptop. I can think of a lot of things that could go wrong there. Right. Like a lot of things, right? And so that's probably not something that I would advise people to do. I would say go find a better solution that's online, somebody that you can trust for reasons that we've talked about with the SOC 2 audits and the, certifications and stuff. And then, bring your data to them if you can, if you're not precluded from doing it, and then get some sleep. Don't worry about it. Because if you only use websites on your laptop, like only websites, you don't have anything downloaded, and maybe you even set your browser to log you off when you're done or shut down or whatever, right? And you lose that laptop and you're 100% confident that you don't have any data on it, you're fine. Yeah. And one of the most common things that's happened in security for me that's really frustrating, and people getting laptops stolen or losing laptops. And it's really not always their fault. It's just if you have 100 laptops in a company, one is going to go missing. And all I want to know is that it doesn't mean anything to anyone. Right. That nobody can get any data off it, and that any data that was on it, we have it. We already have it, and we can just go on working, right? So that's the ideal for ransomware, is to know that even if they manage to, do the ransomware thing, they probably, hopefully, they didn't download it. A lot of times the reason that they scramble the data on your laptop and then give you the keys is because they're not really interested in stealing the data. They're just interested in handling it for ransom. Now, you can't necessarily assume that, but for the most part, it probably is, right? So if you have backups and everything is in the cloud and you don't care, oh, well, they scrambled my desktop wallpaper. Oh, no. Right. Yeah. Who cares, right? Yeah.
In this next episode, we pulled some expertise from within. Rose Rocket's very own Tim Hopkins, who was our VP of Enterprise, made a guest appearance on the next episode. Replacing a TMS is hard, especially for larger businesses. The episode talks about the challenges many businesses face when it comes to replacing the TMS, things like timelines and justifying changes to stakeholders. But in this clip, he touches on one shared sentiment he's observed that every buyer is actually looking for. They're not actually buying a TMS. They're buying a transformation to their business.
The way I'm kind of thinking about this and what I've learned is people will show up and they think they want a TMS, right? And they kind of do, but what they really want is transformation. Right. So what they've been doing is been running on a set of systems and processes probably for at least a decade, maybe even longer. Like one of my kind of strong beliefs is you replace these systems maybe every 10 years. Right, and so they're coming and they've basically got to a point where they've lived in this box and they can't kind of live in it anymore. But the box is never just the TMS, right? Because what's happened in the industry, and you know this more than anyone, is like the customers have become more sophisticated, the brokers have become more sophisticated, the shippers have become more sophisticated, and that's putting pressure on the carriers. And so suddenly they've got a pressing need to actually run their business differently. They think a TMS is going to get there, and it is part of the solution. But increasingly, what I see my job is actually just trying to give some good advice, right? Like, we can put in a new TMS for you, and we'd love to do that, but that's only going to get you part way unless you think about your business processes, unless you think about finance, unless you think about the products that you're actually selling. So pulling that all together and kind of orchestrating it, that's what actually leads to success for, you know, a customer that, you know, a sophisticated customer that will come to our door wanting to replace the TMS platform that they are on.
Our guest, Stephen Kostelik, who's the CEO of BlinkSync Technologies, designed a wearable technology that can help drivers regulate their alertness levels. The goal was to promote driver safety and ultimately empower drivers. In this clip, he and Justin discuss what the business could look like in the next few years.
Let's just talk about the next few years. What are you trying to do in, product expansion or just, is it more about drilling down on the glasses? Like, how are you thinking about the next, couple of years?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas thrown our way. We're learning a lot from all of our user feedback, and we've already made improvements to the glasses. But really, the idea is that BlinkSync just makes software, and we're going to eventually make more and more wearables compatible with our software, and you'll be able to sync multiple devices together. So maybe drivers already use Apple Watches, for example. They can sync that with the glasses to have even more enhanced accuracy on predicting when drivers can expect to feel fatigued. And also just for convenience, maybe drivers aren't used to wearing glasses, but they do wear a watch, and so that allows for more options. And the wearable market is growing and growing and growing. And instead of you having to run multiple apps, like one for each wearable, BlinkSync allows you to sync them all together onto one app.
Okay, that's sweet.
Our next guest is Royce Neubauer, CEO and president of SFL Companies and the founder of Auto Hauler Exchange. Him and Justin have a great conversation around the ways technology is disrupting the logistics business. One of my favorite takeaways from this episode is Royce discussing how he learned to embrace the role of a CEO. He talks about the transition going from day-to-day operations to getting outside of the business, and how technology is what has enabled him to do that.
So technology allowed us to become much more efficient, but it also allowed me to take a step back and say, okay, I need to get out of the day-to-day and learn how to really be a CFO or a CEO, right? Because I knew how to be a broker, just like you. You had a brokerage, you had a service business, you know how to broker freight, right? But being a CEO is a completely different job.
Yeah.
So I knew that if we were able to flip our company inside out in a 2-year span and it become way more efficient, way more transparent, that everybody else was coming right there behind us, including the big guys, right? So if I didn't continually push myself to get ahead of the business, we would have disappeared 3 or 4 years ago. I actually started leaning on resources around me, other business owners that I've met throughout my community. There are programs in most cities like Entrepreneurs Organization or YPO, where you can sit down with other entrepreneurs, other CEOs, and kind of just talk about what they're doing. How are they building their businesses? How are they getting ahead of it? And the mindset that I kind of took was, I'm the visionary of the company. I need people that are going to be implementers and that are going to work that vision, right? So I lead my leadership group that way, that, hey, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what I'm going to go search for, and this is what I'm going to work towards. If you need me, I'm here for you, but I need you to implement the vision. I need you to implement the mission so we can continue to move forward. So I've been very fortunate that I've found 2 very good implementers, 2 very good COOs. Your team works with both of them at Rose Rocket, and they kind of take on some of the vision that I have, and they instill it through our team every day. I'm still very present though in the business as well. I have weekly meetings with the entire company, both companies. So our floor can ask me any questions on, hey, what are we doing here? Where do you see this going there? How's the industry looking next year? Things of that nature. So I think, a couple of things for me is, don't be afraid to lean on resources. Ask for help. Lean on people around you that have done the job. right? I didn't, even though I'd been a CEO since I founded the company, but I was also the janitor. I was the accountant. I was doing everything. And once I got the right people around me, I was able to really focus on learning how to become a CEO, learning how to become that visionary. So I asked for support, I asked for help, and then you really got to find the right people that fit your culture and can really implement that vision across your entire team.
Electric vehicles have been gaining more and more popularity over the years. Our next guest, Chase Barber, founder of Edison Motors, is trying to disrupt the norm. We were surprised to learn that he's actually crowdfunded $1.5 million to build his own electric truck from scratch, quite literally in his own backyard. In this clip, he tries to simplify electric trucking to make it more accessible, hoping it will encourage others to embrace electric transition for the industry.
And like that's one of our like key ethos to showing people these things. And I think that's why it's like, hey, electric vehicles aren't scary. Electric vehicles can be worked on. They can be serviced. You need a little bit of special knowledge. You need an industrial electrician, but they exist.
Yeah. That I think is just an enormously powerful flashpoint. I think that idea is a throwback model, and this idea of things last and you could fix it yourself, and the feeling of like electric cars, like you look at like just from a car perspective, like I don't even know where anything is. Like I don't know what it is, and I don't even know where the hood or the trunk is. Like you don't even think about, like you're like something's wrong, take it in, don't even look at it. This is complicated. This requires a whole new set of standards, set of people, set of expertise, all these other things, and it's friggin' intimidating, right? But like this concept of like it's a full throwback. I love it, man. I think it's just this is just great, and I'm totally like,
it's not complicated. It really isn't.
That's such a refreshing.
You have power lines that
narrative.
come from a generator. Generator goes to batteries to electric motor. There's just wires, and then you have an inverter in between this, which is the AC to the DC.
Yeah.
So but that's not complicated compared to like a transmission of power.
Right.
Like you look at, like it's not. This stuff is simple, and we've been trying to show people like you don't need to be afraid of this electric transition.
Yeah.
I kind of think that these big companies are trying to make it seem super scary and don't look, and you can't open that cover and you need a special technician and all that. Like, there's some scary high voltage.
Yeah.
There's things on the truck that can kill you.
Yeah.
But you want an industrial electrician that's familiar with working with high voltage, can deal with these things. Lockout, tagouts, disconnect, make sure the power is de-energized. There's standard operating procedures in a sawmill or anything like that. I think a lot of them are trying to do it because they're realizing they can make big bucks off the service.
Yeah.
That's their whole business model.
Yeah.
Service, parts. Well, when we design these electric vehicles, we'll design them with parts that'll only work with our electric vehicle. And like, no, there's contactors that exist. You can go get a Gigavac contactor, put that in there. A sawmill has it. Whatever piece of equipment might have that. We use those same bus bars. Then like, because that's the only way we could build this truck, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the money to build custom parts, so we source these things from like electrical supply stores, people that have these parts. And we show that you could build the truck with these parts. You don't need special engineered parts. The parts were off the shelf, which means if you got to service it and you got to work on it, your electrician that's familiar with those electrical supply stores can go buy those parts in his local town. It's not rocket science to figure this stuff out.
That's amazing.
What is more valuable, data or oil? Our guest, Thomas Deakins, director of the Global Supply Chain Institute at the University of Tennessee, talks to us about the importance of leveraging data as a part of the digital supply chain. In this clip, he compares harvesting data to harvesting oil and how using it correctly can help turn your business into gold.
Because data today is the new oil, right? And we have to figure out how to refine the data. And just like we do with oil, but we've got to refine the data, and we got to make sure that we apply that data in the right way, because it could impact us to a point of having to change a business process. It could be as simple as, hey, I'm understanding that I'm using these carriers and I'm having service failures with these carriers, so I need to kick them out. Or I have this one supplier that I pick up from every time, and this supplier always causes my carrier to have a detention charge. And so I need to be on the side of my carrier here and work with my supplier. So we have to look at that, I think, with a 360-degree view and say, how are we going to use this data all across the supply chain? And then what's it mean back to that example I gave you, if it's late, what's the impact to you? Does it impact your warehouse? Does it impact a labor force? Does it impact a production line? Does it impact you downstream? So I think companies really have to think about it from that standpoint. That's why I think the companies that are really successful doing this look at it from that view, and also are taking that data and thinking about it more than just an execution problem or a solution. They're looking at saying, how can I use this data upstream in my production planning or my supply chain planning, because I can see where my inventory is? How am I using this downstream in my BI platform, my analytics, and actually turning that into something so that data then becomes gold, right?
Did you know that truck drivers have a life expectancy rate that is 16 years less than the average population? Our next guest is Mark Manera, founder of Supply Chain Fitness. He was inspired to apply his background in physical therapy to help transportation professionals live healthier lifestyles. In this clip, he and Justin discuss Mark's business and how the solution allows transportation businesses to support wellness for their employees, something incredibly important in an industry that puts a lot of strain on physical well-being.
Tell me about a day in the life of, or things that you're doing to sort of help with, I guess, life expectancy, longevity, if you will.
Yeah, so I mean, we're really focused on the ground lifestyle changes specifically to drivers. When I was starting this, the whole thing, there's a lot of companies in the wellness space, but there's a lot of these companies are industry agnostic, and they really are wide and shallow, trying to be a solution for everyone. And for a lot of these people that don't work in a cubicle, that live this atypical lifestyle, it doesn't speak to them. It doesn't fit into their life. And, it's almost more trouble trying to figure it out on their own than it's worth. And a lot of them just kind of fall flat. And so what we always preach is, like, everything that we do, we want to smack drivers in the face that it was built for them, and building it into their day-to-day life. If it's out on the road, or, if it's on home time, or if they are a local driver and they're home every night, whatever it is, customizing it to, wherever they're at, whatever truck stop, whatever restaurants, we can help them, be more physically active, and then also eat healthier, and have a coach and the accountability around it as well. So the whole solution is delivered through an app right on the driver's phone. They get paired with a coach. That really, the whole experience starts with them building an actual relationship with their coach. And from there, they go through an onboarding process, and we have an algorithm on the back end that really pairs each driver with the first healthy habit that's calculated to be the one that they are most likely to succeed at, given, their lifestyle, their starting point, and their, chronic condition, or just wherever they're at from a medical history perspective. And then from there, the coach, and them continue to progress the plan. And, the goal is that it feels so on the ground that we want our members to feel like, their coach is riding shotgun with them down the highway. And, like, we know what healthy food options are at each truck stop. We're helping them exercise in the back of their truck. We're doing medication reminders and helping them stay, adherent to whatever their doctor said. Hey, you need to be taking these medications. And then, also finding ways to make their life simpler and make it as easy for them as possible to fit healthier habit or fit these healthier routines into their day-to-day life, and doing things like ordering groceries for them directly to the truck stop, so that, we're cutting out all of the hurdles that used to get in their way of, them being able to make their health a priority.
In our final episode of the season, we speak with Christy Knischel, President and CEO of Knischel Logistics. Christy leads a team that boasts a 70% female workforce, and she's had to make some difficult decisions in order to grow and move the business forward. As a prominent woman in transportation, she talks about how to better understand and empower women in a male-dominated industry.
I think the biggest thing is women and men are so different. And I think that men need to understand what they can actually gain from working with the women, and also, like, lifting them up as well. We need more men lifting women up, and knowing that, like, that can help the bottom line. It can help so many different things. And I've had customers reach out to me and say, hey, I have some women in my company. Where do you suggest, like, they get some help? I'm like, I can send you some articles. There's Women in Trucking. We have a Ladies Leadership Coalition podcast where we talk about things. It's finding mentors, and, I always tell them they can reach out to me and I can give them some guidance. And so I think the biggest thing is, men just understanding that we're not the enemy, right? We're here to also help. And it's not like, I don't know if men get threatened, and I think it depends on the woman too, because like, obviously there's some that can be feisty, just like men too. And it's a personality thing. But, the one thing that John did here specifically was take leadership coaching from a woman to learn how to better work with women and understand how they think, and like, how do I deal with the emotional side? Because men have emotions too. And we've talked about this recently, where there's a lot of women that cry and that they outwardly just cry. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but like when you're in a meeting with a man and it makes you uncomfortable, it's like, how do you deal with that and addressing that thing? So I think that's part of it too, is just, figuring out how do you work better with them and asking for that help. And I think having just conversations with women, like, how do you think you can, help this situation, and asking them to hear their voice, just to be heard,
And that wraps up our lineup of guests from the 2023 Freight Famous season. Thank you so much for tuning in to this special recap episode. I hope you had just as much fun as I did going over some of our favorite moments from the last year. We have some exciting things planned for the 2024 season, and we can't wait for you to find out. To make sure you don't miss a future episode of Freight Famous, please subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on TikTok and YouTube. See you in the new year.